welcome back to Kelly Does Stuff. I'm gonna start out today's video with a confession. And we've been friends for a while now, so I feel like I can be honest with you. I don't like Valentine's Day. I haven't really done a deep dive on my emotions, but if I had to guess, I think it's because it's the first holiday stuff you start to see in the stores after my favorite holidays of Halloween and Christmas. So when I start to see the hearts, I'm like, it's really over, isn't it? The good times are done. So no real hatred, I just don't like it at all. Then I had this idea, totally brilliant idea. What if I created like a Valentine display or a Valentine vignette, some sort of scene? That would probably like get me into it because it's fun to celebrate stuff. It's kind of fun, not fun to dislike things. So like maybe I could get really into Valentine's Day by creating a display. And I had a couple of buildings that I had gotten a little while ago at Goodwill. Every once in a while I just kind of go and see what they have, and I kind of buy some. For future projects, maybe I'll turn it into a Halloween house or some sort of Christmas thing or like a Valentine thing. So I decided to do that and, you know, paint it like pink and red, and I hated it. Hated the way it looked. I hated making it. Nothing about it I enjoyed at all. So I was like, that's fine. That's okay. You don't like Valentine's Day. You don't have to. And so I just kind of put the house to the side. And then it occurred to me, go back to your roots. You love Halloween. So make it like a My Bloody Valentine theme, or like a Valloween. Like do Valentine's Day with like a spooky twist. And I was like, I'm already in love. I'm already in love with it. So that's what this video is. How I created my first Bloody Valentine Valloween little vignette.
So here we are with our horrible house. I'm creating my display on 2 pieces of EPS foam. This foam is really thin. It's actually left over from a package that I received. The first thing that I'm going to do is draw out the shape of a blood river. Spooky! I'm drawing the river on the top piece of styrofoam, and then I'm going to use a hot wire tool to cut along each of those lines. I'll take out the river shape of it, save that in my scrap pile, and the river will actually be in the recessed area on the bottom part of the styrofoam. There are a number of hot wire tools available, and I do have a tutorial on that if you are interested in learning a little bit more. I'm starting out with a tool that has a wire, and you can see that it's a U-shaped. I typically will reach for this tool to do precision cutting. However, it's not the best tool for this purpose. You'll see that I actually cut away a little bit too much of that styrofoam there. It's not a huge deal because I can just go back and fix it like I am doing right here, because I need that little piece. That's the piece that I'm going to keep, because remember, I'm cutting away the river and I'm keeping the negative space of that top layer. To cut the other side of my river, I know that I just have to go with the hot wire knife. And this is a great tool. There's nothing wrong with it. I just personally don't have as much control. I will typically leave the blade in the space for a little bit too long and end up cutting away more styrofoam than I mean to. So this piece is going into my scrap pile, and I'm going to put the rest of my top pieces back on the other piece of styrofoam, and that little area in there is where my blood river is going to go. Look at this cute bridge I got at Goodwill for $2.99. We are gonna make it spooky! My original design for this display was to have the house front facing, but I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't it be so much more interesting if it were at an angle? You guys are so right. That's exactly what we're doing. I wanted to create a cobblestone path going from my house to my bridge, so I'm outlining the shape first with a pencil, and then I'm gonna go draw in the cobblestone with a pen. This may be a very unnecessary step for many of you, because to actually create the cobblestone, I'm going to use this hot wire engraver. If you can see that path in your head and execute it perfectly, skip the drawing part and go straight to the engraving. I don't have that much confidence in myself, so that is why I draw it out ahead of time, so I know exactly what my finished cobblestone should look like. After carving, I always add texture to my cobblestone, and typically I'm working with XPS foam, which takes the impressions really well of a really textured rock or aluminum foil. But you can see here, kind of see here, that this EPS foam really isn't doing anything with these rocks. It doesn't take the impression well. So in order for my paint, the dry brushing technique that I'm going to use to really pop and get some details, I'm going to mix some sand into some black acrylic paint, and that's going to be my base layer for painting this cobblestone. This is the first time I'm using this technique, and spoiler alert, it works pretty well. I had a lot of this black paint left over, and I absolutely hate wasting supplies. And since I knew I was going to be painting the rest of my styrofoam, I went ahead and mixed this black paint in with some green paint. I know I'm going to cover this with some sort of ground cover. I hadn't at this point really decided on what it was going to be, but we definitely couldn't have any of that white styrofoam showing through. It was time to give our terrible house some attention, and I have to be honest, you guys, I was putting this off forever because I was traumatized by the previous experience of trying to paint this pink and red and turn it into a Valentine house. I really felt at this point the house and I were in a fight. It was like a major lover's quarrel, and I kind of just wanted to throw the thing on the ground and smash it into a million pieces. Just kidding. But I had anxiety about trying to paint it because it just felt beyond redemption. At this point, but I decided to just kind of take some of that black green paint and stop thinking so much about it and just throw some paint on the house, and we're just gonna see what happens. Also, can I tell you a secret that you promise you won't tell anybody else? I didn't paint the back of the house like anything. I just left it my Valentine experiment because I was already mad at the house and I just didn't want to spend any more time on it. And I was like, nobody's going to see the back of it anyway. So I just paint the front and the sides of the house. So you are allowed to do that. In case you're wondering, you can actually just do, honestly, like anything that you want. One thing I was worried about adding the paint and the sand together versus adding the sand to some glue and applying it to the stones and then painting over is that the sand would fill in these spaces here and you would lose the detail of the stones. And that is exactly what happened. So as it was still wet, I went through with this tool because it was handy. It's for clay. And just scraped out a lot of the sand paint that was filling it in here. So I do think next time I'll just do like a sand glue mixture, put it on top of the cobblestones first, and then let that dry, go over with the paint. So I'm not having to do stuff like this. It is dry. Totally feel like a dentist. Kind of like it. So anyway, that was just weird. A little bit different process. My suspicions were right. So gold star for me, but there we go. But we're just gonna go ahead and see what we get now. We do have a lot of sand and stuff there, so. The good times continue with painting our cobblestone gray. Now we are going to begin our dry brushing technique. I won't do a lot of detail here or spend a lot of time on this because I cover this in a lot of other videos. Plus, we are chasing daylight, running from daylight, fighting with the daylight. I don't know, the lighting is not ideal right now, but just know I'm dry brushing and also dry brushing. And it's pretty impossible to see here, but that sand that we put on top of there to give some texture really does start to pop as we go through more layers of dry brushing. I'm really glad I experimented with this technique. The next thing I wanted to do was create a blood river. So romantic. But first, I'm going to secure those pieces of styrofoam that got cut or broken in the carving process with some toothpicks. It's a great way to just keep it together, and then later I'll go back with some glue. To create my hot glue river, I'm going to trace the shape that I need onto this parchment paper. There are so many different ways that you can create water effects. If you decide to go with hot glue, do not put the glue directly onto that EPS foam because it will just eat completely through it. A long time ago, I learned that you should put lotion on top of your parchment paper so your hot glue projects don't stick. I always try to do that, but sometimes I forget and my hot glue never sticks. However, if I'm going to create something this big and spend all that time and use all of that hot glue, I try to make sure that I've got that lotion down just as a precautionary measure. I'd hate to do all of this and then my bloody river is stuck to my parchment. To create something like this, I let my hot glue get as hot as possible, which means I'll turn on my hot glue gun, let it warm up for a very long time until that glue is coming out in a bubbly effect. This will allow it to blend together really well, so you don't have to worry so much about how you're applying it. You just kind of get it down on the parchment and it will take care of the rest by creating a solid base layer of your river. If you wanted to go in and add some rippling effects, rushing water effects, you could wait until that layer completely cooled and then go in and add that detail on top of your base river layer. This is similar to what I talked about in my hot glue waterfall tutorial, if you saw that. It's time to paint the blood river and I need your help. So when I point to the red that you like, give a round of applause or raise your hand. Let me know which red I should use. Okay, obviously that was a brilliant idea, but it's not working because I have no idea what you guys are voting for. So let's go to my dog Angel to see if she can help us out.
Okay, Angel, this is just red. You see it? Okay. Raise your hand if you think I should use red. Should I use red? Angel, this one's holiday red. What do you think about that one? Should I use that one? Raise your hand if you think I should use holiday red.
Well, that choice was pretty clear, so it was time to start painting. I did the styrofoam first just to make sure we were totally covering up any white. We wouldn't want that to show through and ruin the vibe of our river. I also decided to go in and get a little fancy and add some other colors, shades I guess I should say, of red to add some depth and dimension. That turned out to be a complete waste of time because once I started to paint the glue and then put that on top of the styrofoam, you couldn't really see any of that depth dimension detail. Now, I definitely could have done that on top of the glue, but I think we all get to a point in our life where we're like, I spent enough time creating a blood river. Plus, I had to go in and do something about this winter bridge. We've come to my favorite part of the project, creating a love cave. I am using XPS foam for this, and I decided that I wanted to add a little lake to it, and then I was also going to have it arch over that blood river. I am just using a blade here to carve up some stone steps, and then I'm going to use a lot of scrap XPS foam to hot glue to my base structure here, and then we're going to go in and plaster everything before we paint it. while I was plastering, I realized that I forgot to carve out the cave. I did build up the rock around it, but I wanted it to be more recessed. So I'm not going to plaster in that center area, and I let the plaster dry mostly before I went in and carved a little bit of a recess into that styrofoam. I do also end up covering that cave in the plaster, and I like to let my plaster dry for about 2 days before I go in and paint it, which is an incredible test of my patience because I'm just so eager to see what this cave is going to look like. But I did have another part of the project that I needed to start working on, and that is adding this little grave next to my house. Most of my Halloween stuff is packed up in storage, but I did have a couple little skeletons floating around my garage, as you do. So I broke it up into its little skeleton bits. This little skeleton, I think I got these at the dollar store last year, and they break apart pretty easily. I'm applying the hot glue on the low setting directly to my skeleton, letting it cool for a second or two before applying it to the EPS foam. The EPS foam doesn't take the heat as well as the XPS foam, and it will definitely melt much more quickly and easily. So that's why I like to let things cool a little bit before attaching them to the foam. I debated for a little while whether I wanted to cut out a grave shape into that styrofoam and then put the skeleton in the grave. But ultimately, I decided I wanted him to be pushing through the earth. And so I'm gonna build up the grave around him. I'm using 2 products, a realistic earth texture and a realistic mud texture product. And you'll see why as we go forward, I decided to do this. And just prepare your heart because oh, this is just the cutest thing you are ever gonna see. Okay, maybe not like ever, but I mean, it's gonna warm your heart. Now it's time to go in and apply a whole bunch of different ground cover. I used your basic kind of moss, and then I got this stuff on Amazon here to make it look like some flowers are pushing up through the grave and just kind of sprinkle it throughout the display. This is just your basic moss that you can get at Michael's or a craft store or online somewhere, and I'm just breaking up really fine because I don't want really thick, tall, bushy kind of ground cover. And since this is EPS foam, I am just using a PVA glue. Typically, I will apply this type of moss with hot glue, but I really thought it was just gonna melt through that foam, and then I just would have been so sad. It was time to work on my second skeleton coming out of the grave, and this is where I just kept saying, this is so cute. This skeleton is going to be on the other side of the river, reaching across to get to his love by the house. True love really never does die, you guys. I had already broken the head off this skeleton, so I am gluing it back into place, but the good thing about having done this is then I could kind of decide the angle that I wanted his little head. Time for more painting. It's time to bring our cave to life, and I need your help. I'd like to know what you guys think. On these longer videos where I am covering many techniques in one video, we're plastering, we're carving, we're doing cobblestone, we're painting. Do you want me to go into detail, for example, talking about all of the different elements that are involved in painting this cave, or just kind of like quickly showing you, just saying, hey, I'm gonna paint this cave, we're doing a base color, and then we're gonna dry brush, and then do shorter videos that go into greater detail. If I go into a lot of detail on every one of these elements, the video could be like hours long, and sometimes I'm into that. Sometimes when people are doing projects, I'm like, yes, I would like to sit here and watch you for the rest of my life. And then sometimes I'm like, can you just tell me as quickly as possible what you did? I know this is going to vary from person to person, but just kind of in general, any feedback that you have on this would be so appreciated. One thing I do want to mention about dry brushing this cave is that I decided to go in with some of that metallic silver that you saw there, and then later I'm going to mix in some metallic white. And I just wanted this cave to have some extra little pop, give it a little bit of sheen. And I don't always do that with my dry brushing, so I just wanted to make sure that I mention it here. And of course we have to paint our darling little pond red. I originally was going to do some sort of water effects. I was actually going to use Woodland Scenic's water effect to show you that for this, but I'm going to save that for another project, partly because this project was just going on forever and ever, and we are already past Valentine's Day. Of course we have to add some trees, and I'm going to use some floral picks to create some trees. The great thing about this particular floral pick right here is you can get this year-round at Michael's. It is not a seasonal item. So, you know, it's March, it's May, and you're like, I have got to make some Halloween trees right now, but there are no supplies in the store. Grab these floral picks. They are $10, which I personally think are kind of pricey, but get them on sale, use those Michael's rewards, use a coupon, and you can create several different trees. I'm using 2 different picks to create a couple of different trees here. I wanted the trees to look like they had maybe some fruit hanging from them or some little flowers. And of course we had to stay on theme. So I grabbed these sticker hearts from the Valentine section at Michael's. First we got to add it to our bridge, and then I'm going to use some fishing line here. And since they are sticky, you can just stick it to both sides of that fishing line. I first thought maybe I needed some hot glue. Thankfully that wasn't necessary, because that hot glue became a massive pain, and I was regretting every decision I had ever made in my life that led me to that moment. So you don't need the glue. The stickers are fine to secure that. And then we're just going to tie it around the various branches of our tree. We of course had to light up our house, so I'm just using a basic village cord, and I'm changing out that bulb with a red one. I also forgot to mention that I put a little heart into our love cave, and this was just a pick that I got at Michael's, and I pulled one of those hearts off, and I didn't even need to glue it. I just stuck it right there in the cave. These little trees I got in the kind of like a dollhouse section, if you're gonna create like some fairy gnome garden thing section at Michael's, and for some reason these trees cracked me up.
I'm kind of like bush. Why are you cracking me up? Is it supposed to be like a tall tree? What's happening?
We are getting so close to finishing. Let's add our final little details.